daily survey with Ria Ramz is about to go live online. Catch the top Monster hits of the day based on your votes and other TDS goodness. Streaming video on the Monster Facebook page at RX931, the Monster YouTube channel at RX931, and twitch.tv/Monster RX931. Your TDS host, Ria Ramz. Stand by and enjoy the program.
Summer's hottest Monster RX93.1. You just heard Secondhand Serenade with the track called Fall For You at 10:36 in the morning. Time of that song was brought to you by Paraíso Beer, a taste of Paraíso. Welcome back to Riot Wednesday Monsters. You got me, Ria Ramz, keeping you company all the way until 1 p.m. And guess what? I am not alone. We have a very, very special guest with us today. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Morning, I'm BEKA. Hello.
Hello, everyone. We have BEKA here with us. Yay. And we are going to get to talk to her about her music, which, by the way, is amazing. I am a big fan. I was listening to all your music last night.
Get it all in the brain.
Yeah, just to like, you know, prepare myself and like be more excited to be able to talk to you today. So for all the monsters who aren't too familiar yet with you and your music, why don't you give them a little bit of an introduction as to who you are and what kind of music you usually create?
Oh my gosh, what a ginormous question. Well, I'm BEKA. I guess I make kind of, it's pop. It's like anthemic, hopefully slightly empowering, 80s infused pop.
Right.
And I am literally so happy to be here.
We are so happy to have you. It is such an honor. And, you know, listening to your music, you do come up with, like, your lyrics are genius.
Thank you.
You have such a beautiful way of talking about different things in life. And you did mention before that, you know, before getting to this point in your career, actually up to now, you still kind of struggle a little bit with the imposter syndrome, right? And I think that's something that a lot of the monsters can relate to. But for those who don't know, by the way, imposter syndrome is basically the inability to accept that you deserve the success that you have, right?
Fair.
Now, how exactly would you say you were able to kind of overcome that or deal with that imposter syndrome?
I think it's such a wild thing that so many of us have because we have these like huge ideas of the things that are possibilities, but we also know ourselves and we know our negativity, we know our like limits. And I think for me, a big part of it was probably just getting it out of my mouth. Like I often hear people speak about vulnerability. The way to get over it is you smash it by being honest with somebody that you love so that it's not just you in your head. So I think probably talking it through a lot with people and just telling them the things I was scared of and then still doing it. That's the thing I think is just still putting yourself in the position to do the things you love that you doubt you can do.
Right.
But it's not easy because it's a mentality that's kind of invisible, I guess.
Yeah. Exactly. And despite it being hard, like it's not tangible, the whole idea of it, it's still something that a lot of people suffer, right? But you did mention that talking through it with people really did help you a lot. And I know that a couple years ago, before you released your your debut song, you had like a talk, right, with Han and with your road manager. And they were the ones who kind of pushed you to believe in yourself a little bit more and to help you realize that, hey, this is what I want to do. But how exactly did you get that going? Like, how did that talk start? And also, how did you decide, like, okay, I'm going to put action into what we've talked about?
So we were like at this LA show playing, I was doing backing vocals for them for a few years, and we were playing that Love Me, Love Me Not album. And I think them sitting me down and sort of saying, why don't you do this yourself, made me have to confront the reason, which was probably just thinking that the way I'd really want to do music and what I really love about music is how powerful it is, and it can change culture, it's very healing, it's like a medicine. And I think that just felt like too high of a thing to shoot for. But then knowing that I would be able to do it in that safe space with them was maybe the thing that allowed me to kind of break that pattern of thinking. And then I think it really started in my imagination. I think once I gave myself permission to admit what it was that I really wanted, then you can let yourself go wild and think about it and dream about it. And that isn't about whether it's doable, but more letting yourself be honest with yourself. And I think that was a big start. And then also just collaborating with safe spaces, you know, not necessarily going and making everything really difficult, but just having these gorgeous people in my life who did music, who I could be like, I'd forgotten how to write. And I think I'd written music for so many years, and I'd done so many of the things that I do now, but I hadn't counted myself in to be able to do it myself. Is probably the best way I'd put it.
Right. I love that. I love that you said giving yourself permission to just dream.
Yeah.
Right? And I feel like a lot of people can take inspiration from that, because I feel like a lot of the monsters maybe listening right now think that just because they feel like it's too big for them, they just don't allow themselves to dream it anymore. So BEKA, right here, Monsters, is living proof that as long as you allow yourself to dream it, you can do it. And
100%.
You started out with touring as the backing vocalist for Han. I know that they were your wedding band, right?
I love that has literally leaked into the world. That's my fault.
And years later, right? Years later, they contacted you asking if you could sing for them. And how did that feel? Like, what was your reaction at that time?
I mean, because we went to university together, I just thought they were both hilarious and I loved them. But we hadn't seen each other for years. And then James, out of the blue, just kind of got in touch. And I didn't know what they were doing at the time. I didn't know how big it was. So I was like, yeah, this sounds great. Then started researching and was like, oh, you're doing really well. This is fun. And I think because they make such a gorgeous working environment, I guess it's like I was saying, like being with friends, it makes it easy. It's something that you want to do and you can't believe you're being paid to do it.
Right.
And so I think for a few years, just getting to do that with them was, you know, just the dream, like traveling the world with your besties and then becoming besties again.
Right. And you got to travel the world, but at the same time, how about your family? I mean, of course, going around the world, having to be away from your family must have been difficult too. So how did you deal with that?
I think the family unit in England is like quite different to how it is here. I know that you guys are so close with your families. You'll still live together. Whereas I think in the UK, once you leave education, you know, your higher education, you probably may move home for a little bit, but then you go on your own. So already there's that distance with family. But I think for me, with my family, we're very close. We speak on the phone, but they're also like, go and live the one life that you've got. So, you know, as much as I would miss them and I'd want to see them, it definitely felt like a smaller thing.
Right.
The bigger thing was traveling is like something that my parents put in me to want to do, and music and performing, and, you know, the payoff was like way greater than the sadness,
right.
if you know what I mean.
Oh, that's awesome.
Does that sound mean?
No, not
Sorry,
at all.
guys. I love you.
But I guess, like, you have traveled so many places already with Han, right?
Yeah.
What would you say is one of the places that made a mark on you, or that you have like some really cool or just really memorable experiences at?
Oh, God, so many. I know this sounds like I'm just saying this, but I can tell you hands to the ground. That's not even a saying, but I can just tell you really honestly, Manila genuinely was the place that we played Wonderland, and the show was mind-blowing, and it was the first time I'd ever been to the Philippines, and like, I keep saying it, but the people, you guys are so warm, and it was something I'd not really experienced before. And I think it was so fun. We did these mall tours again, we came back and did that, and that was wild. And I think that also building that like fan base, which I don't really like to call that. I have this WhatsApp group called More Than Fans. You can all join it if you want to, which is just like a place for all the fans who feel like family, because then when I released my own music, having people on another side of the world who were like, we back you and we want to be for you, was just crazy. And it was unlike anything I'd had before.
Right.
So I have to say Manila, sorry.
Let's go, Philippines! But okay, can you kindly repeat the name of that WhatsApp group? Just so...
Yeah, the WhatsApp group is called More Than Fans. And I've got one right now that is just for the Asia fans, because then we're all on the same time zone. So if you go onto my Instagram, there's a link that will take you to it.
Okay, there we go, Monsters. If you guys want to join that WhatsApp group, make sure to check out BEKA's Instagram. I believe it's BEKA on Toast.
It is, at BEKA, BEKA on Toast.
Yes. I have to ask, since we brought up your Instagram, BEKA on Toast, where'd that come from?
Okay, so I was with Steve, this guy called Steve Huff, who tours with Han. He's like, he actually went to primary school, so first school with James of Han.
Right.
He's like our best friend. And we were just having some coffee, trying to work out like what my Instagram handle would be. And I was like, Steve, we were going back and forth, and it was BEKA Music, BEKA Official, BEKA International, all these things. And I was like, they're a bit rubbish. And I was just like, I think in the end, it's just going to end up being like BEKA on Toast, isn't it? And he just looked at me and he was like, we're going to do it. And also, I have to say, as a tea addict, I love tea. Tea is like my life. I also love toast. Tea and toast.
Perfect.
What can I say?
That's perfect. Well, it describes you perfectly then. So it's perfect for especially fans who are just new to your music and to who you are. I think that's awesome. Now, let's talk a little bit more about your music. You did, like we mentioned earlier, you did go around with Han and you were featured in 2 of his songs.
Yeah.
Location Unknown would be one of them and Crying Over You.
Yeah.
How was it working on those tracks with 2 of your best friends who I believe you consider like your brothers now too?
Oh my gosh, they are so my brothers. So we'd had this, before the Love Me Not album came out, we had this show in London where it was a bit more intimate and a lot of the label and people were coming and, you know, kind of industry and fans kind of vibe. And we played Crying Over You and the next day they sort of rang me and were like, look, we think that you'd be perfect for this for the album. Would you do it? So I was like, I think yes. And we went into Andy's flat. He had this lovely studio and just recorded it. And it was a very different way of singing for me because it was much softer and much more intimate than I'd kind of sung in the past. And then I guess that was like where the whole BEKA thing was born because it was, you know, what are you going to be called on this song? And I was like, I don't know. And then with Location Unknown, it was just this amazing day. We were in New York. We had a day off and we'd planned for this recording of it, and we'd never done the stripped back version before. And I think there's also one that they did for day one with some like beautiful strings. But then this was just the 3 of us, and we had no idea that it would then like blow up because of, you know, this young girl in Indonesia called Gempi who ended up getting Instagram by her dad, and then that blew up over there, and it just went really well. But I think both times it was like surprising. You know, which I think sometimes are the best things in life, aren't they? You're doing something without super intensely, you know, wanting it to be a success.
Right.
And then because maybe of the authenticity of it, it is something people can catch.
Yes, exactly. And those 2 songs are staples for a lot of people. So I think it's awesome that, you know, we kind of got a little bit of an idea of how that came to be. And after you released those songs, sometime during the lockdown, that's when you said, okay, I think it's time.
Yeah.
And you released a song called I'll Be There. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about this song?
Yeah, so I guess after that LA show where Han had been like, why don't you do this? I had then a lot of the tour to kind of imagine and think and let myself sort of decide what I'd want for this whole project and, you know, becoming an artist. And we were still traveling a lot, and so I'd come home from, I think it was actually from one of our Asia tours, and Jordan, my husband, he's been my bestie. We're like childhood sweethearts. We've been together since we were 15. I love you, Jordan. Shout out. And, but what was so hard was he was really struggling with his mental health, you know, depression and anxiety, and I knew that, but I didn't know how bad things were.
Yeah.
And so I think coming home and just seeing someone you really love with this invisible thing that so many of us fight, and not really knowing what to do. And also knowing I was about to start writing.
Right.
I was just making some tea and toast, classic. I was in my dressing gown and this gorgeous like classical music was playing and I had these words as I was thinking about him, which were the opening of the song, which was, you don't always feel like being center of attention. And then it goes on to say, but there's a side of you that sometimes gets frightened. And as I started to like write it and hum and record it, I started to cry. And I think sometimes when you have like an emotional response to something, we can be really negative about emotions, but actually I think it was like I kind of realized I think maybe there's something in this. And so ended up writing I'll Be There as a song for him and a song for, you know, just for you to send to your person, whoever that is, and sort of say, you don't have to always have a show of strength. And I don't have to have the words, but I think just being present sometimes is often what we want.
Yeah. And this song is just so beautiful. It's so comforting as well. And I feel like it is just such a good message. It doesn't even have to be sent to anybody. It can be for yourself,
Yeah,
like a
totally.
reminder.
Yeah.
Just a reminder that it's okay to be weak sometimes. There's always going to be someone who's going to be there for you.
Yeah.
And I think that it's so beautiful that you were able to translate what you were experiencing into such a beautiful song that so many people around the world can relate to and can hold on to for hope.
Thank you.
So that's such a beautiful song. And after that, you released so many more, which are so awesome, by the way. You then released another track with Han called
Yeah.
More Than Friends.
Yeah.
And I think this is about just like teenage love, right?
Right.
Like telling someone how you feel, even if it's scary.
Yeah.
Would you say that this is based on an experience, like maybe with your husband?
Oh,
or
100%. The whole story is
Oh, okay.
completely about him.
Do tell.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, we were together when we were 15, and we were like childhood sweethearts, best friends, really, that stupid, like intense teenage love.
Yeah.
But also we were both quite grown up for our age. So I think we were like really feeling it hard. And then when I turned 18, I just was like, do you know what? I don't know if this is what I want. And I broke his heart and I broke it off, which at that time as well, when you've been together for what, like 3 years, that's like 55 years in teenage years, isn't it?
Fair, that's
You're like
fair.
old married people. And then a year later, I was at university. He'd gone off to do his thing. We kind of stayed in touch a little bit, but like, the ex energy.
Right.
And my brother, who's my best friend, he calls me up and he was like, hey, Bugs, because he calls me Bugsy. He's like, hey, Bugs, I've just seen Jordan. Because Jordan was tutoring him maths at the time.
Okay.
So weird. You know when you're like, Mum and Dad, like, pull it together.
Yeah.
The ex does not need to be tutoring my brother and best friend.
Yeah.
And he was like, I've just seen Jordan. He's so hot. And I was like, why are you saying this? This is not a helpful comment. And it breaks the code of the siblings. And then, but it got me thinking about Jordan again. And I think having had a year apart and a year to grow up, I just suddenly realized that he had everything that I would need in somebody that I would want to be with for life. And then it just spiraled out of control and I couldn't stop thinking about him and was like, oh my God, he's the love of my life.
Oh no.
What have I done? And so I thought, you know what, stuff it. He was always the one who would be the one to do something that cost him. Like it was a more vulnerable, emotional thing from his side more than it was mine. So I thought, let me like make a grand gesture. And so I just called him and I called him up and he was like, hello. I was like, hi. And I just said, I don't even know where these next lines came from because this was like not my energy, but I was just like, look, you are the first person I've ever loved. I want you to be my last. And then he said, I hope you know what you're doing. And then we got back together and we got married.
Oh
so
my
cute.
God.
Like within time, not the next time. Yeah.
Wait, that's awesome.
So the whole song is about that, and that's why we wanted it to feel so nostalgic.
Right.
And like Andy of Han, we wrote this song together, Han and me. But Andy also has like someone he's been with since he was 18. So I think we both had that real nostalgia of you're going back to tell that person, and then the best thing happened and someone proposed in our New Zealand show and she said to her like fiance, she was like, you and I should be more than a girlfriend.
Oh my God.
I had an emotional breakdown on stage. I just couldn't believe it. I was like, this is the best day of my life.
That is, wait, I can't. I have no words. That is awesome. And I can't even imagine how that made you feel.
Oh
because,
my gosh.
Because like you were seeing in real time and in real life, like your song being something to someone else.
It was crazy. I couldn't believe it. And you know that people maybe know your music, but you never think that they're gonna like weave it into this most amazing moment of, I was so grateful. I was like, even if you're actors, even if you're paid actors, thank you.
All right, but I guess like with that, you took a risk. So there are a lot of people out there. I feel like, especially now, people are so afraid to just admit their feelings to the people that they love. So why don't you give like a little word of advice to all those who are holding back and who are too afraid to tell someone that they want to be more than friends?
Oh my gosh, just do it. Do you know what? I think in life, we can just be crazy sometimes, but it's not always wise. And so I do think in this kind of scenario, you've got to try and be wise by just taking a look at, what do I feel for you? But if you honestly feel like this is a person for you and this is your person and you're maybe sensing something back or not, I just think what's the worst thing that can happen? This is your one life. You're not going to have a chance where you then start living your actual real life. This is the one today in this day. So just freaking go for it.
I love that. I love that. This is your one. You've been emphasizing this is your one life.
Yeah, it is.
And I feel like it's just such a good reminder to so many people out there, right? And that is an awesome song. So to all the monsters out there, if you're looking for a sign to admit your feelings for someone, this is it.
Also,
take it from
BEKA.
BEKA.
Slide into the DMs, right? Slide into the DMs
Right.
with the song. Just send the song and say nothing more.
Oh my God,
See
yeah.
what happens.
That's right. Just send the song, send the link to More Than Friends, and
I'm
see what
sorry if
happens.
I'm responsible for that. Love you, you'll be okay.
And after that, you went on to release a lot more songs, like Broken Hearted together with Joan.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful song, by the way. It hurts. It hurts, but in a really good way. And then you also released My One. You Got, especially, was like just such an interesting take, because for the first couple of songs you were singing about something very, very personal, or at least something based on your own experiences.
Yeah.
But for You Got, this one was inspired by Kamala Harris, right?
Yes.
So why don't you tell us a little bit more about this song?
Yeah, I was so taken by seeing her become the first female vice president we'd ever had, who was a woman of color. And I was so shocked that, like, in 20 whatever year it was, this was the first. And I was thinking how wild it is that so many young women, and as I was like on my phone just on socials, seeing all these videos of parents posting their little girls saying, they're like, "Mom, could I be a VP too?" And the kids are all, and the mums are like, "Yeah, you can do anything you want." And so as much as I was like furious about it, that this was the first time, I also felt like how powerful, what an incredible moment. And then I started to think about, if you were an adult or a parent and you were going off in that time with the, huge civil rights movement that was happening, you were going off to march, or you were going to go and do something where your life was at risk, what would be the last thing you'd say to the people you love? And I'd been really inspired by a few stories in my own life, and so kind of threaded those through with these few characters that I posed. But this song really is like everything I'd ever want to say. Like, should I, God forbid, drop dead tomorrow, this would be like the one thing I'd want to leave in the world, I think.
You Got.
Yeah.
All right, monsters. Listen to that song, You Got.
So intense for me. I will not die tomorrow, I hope.
Please don't.
I'll try my best.
We still have a lot to look forward from you. So please. But this next song that I want to talk about is something that really hit me personally when I listened to it, and it's called Thorn, right? And I know that this came about when your husband Jordan asked you what would happen if you wrote about the most painful thing in your life.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
And here it just feels so raw and so vulnerable. And I feel like this song can be interpreted in so many different ways by different people based on their own experiences. But we want to hear, of course, from you what exactly you wanted to tell your listeners with this song.
Yeah, I was having a shower and Jordan just came in, burst in. You know when you're like, this is private time, please don't come in with these very intense questions. And straight away after he'd asked me that, I kind of just, it didn't take any time to sort of think about this like moment in my childhood with some pain like in my family. And basically, I think we all have those like family things, don't we?
Right.
And I think it's very easy to think that they're left in our childhood, but actually if we leave them undealt, they can follow us forever. And yeah, I guess the song is about me sort of looking at that pain and being like, I don't have to just push it away. It's okay that it's a part of me. And also I think just like loving people who do things that aren't great, because that's all of us. We will all have those things in our life where we do things that we wish we hadn't. And they hurt. And I guess left undealt with, like the chorus says, that thorn in your side is hurting me. And I think it's true, isn't it? The things that we don't deal with in ourselves can end up then hurting others as well.
Right.
So it's always a good reminder just to deal with your ish.
Right. And it also, in that song, you also said, but I can't leave.
Yeah.
And I just feel like it's just such a good reminder of what you said, that everybody is in the process of healing. Everybody is a work in progress. And, you know, while we hurt, sometimes we can hurt other people, but as long as we kind of deal with it with the people who matter to us most, we can get through it, right?
I want you to summarize all my songs because you just do it so perfectly. I'm going to go home and just remember all
Sign
of this.
me up.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. I really love the song, Thorn. It's just such a good reminder. So if anybody needs like a song to listen to, those who are kind of in the process of healing, those who are loving somebody who's in the process of healing,
Sure.
I feel like that's also just such a place to be in. Loving someone who's still
so true.
a work in progress, right?
Yeah, which we all are. Yeah.
Exactly. So Thorn is the song for you. And you also released the song Don't Call Me a Friend. And I find this really interesting because compared to your other songs, this one is a lot more angsty.
Yes, it is.
Right. So why don't you tell us a little bit of like the background or like the story behind this song?
I always feel terrible with this song at the end because I want to be like, the chorus line is not me. It's not what I'm trying to say. But I had this situation where in my life where I'd had people who just couldn't meet me where I was at. That's very cryptic.
Right.
And it reminded me a lot of my grandparents. So my grandma and granddad on my mum's side. My grandma's from the UK, from North Yorkshire. She's a white lady. And my granddad's from St. Vincent and the Grenadines in the Caribbean, and he's a black man. And when they met in England, when he was studying, they had a lot of people who really couldn't deal with them being together because they were two different races.
Right.
And they came up with, there was a lot of hate towards that. And I think there was something in me who was I was also dealing with a situation that was kind of around race as well. And in the end, I was just like, do you know what? We've got to love ourselves enough sometimes and like have boundaries that say, I'm so here to help you understand, because we all have ignorances around our lives and cultures and our experiences, our genders, our everything. And yet, actually, there's also a point where you have to have a boundary that's like, I can't just keep accepting rubbish. And what's so funny is, you look at my cute grandparents and then you see the title, Don't Call Me a Friend. It's quite opposite, but I loved that their story was something I could like identify with. And yeah, Don't Call Me a Friend is like, it's just saying, I don't just need to keep accepting rubbish if it's rubbish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And after that, you also released a song called Your Skin, which I feel is just so, it talks so much about your pride in who you are and your identity. So I think it's awesome that those two came one after the other. It's like, don't call me a friend, and I am proud of who I am, right? But of course, I want to talk more about your latest release, which is Tears. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about that song? You released that just this year, right?
I did, yeah. That was my latest single. It's something that I'm so proud of. This song, to listen to, you wouldn't probably know what it was about, but the story has kind of been one of the most profound things that's happened in my life. So I think last year I was definitely struggling a lot with just a kind of, I guess, a sense of whirlwind in myself, feeling like I'm always all over the place and difficult and a mess. And, as a grown-up, we all have these standards of like, this is what is professional and this is what is successful. And so often I felt like I was just missing the mark with those things. And I had somebody in my life who was a radio presenter, and she came out and said she had ADHD. And this thing was something I'd always heard in school, but I thought it was just, naughty boys and girls didn't have this. And
right.
I think as I then started to research it and I was reading some of these symptoms, I was like, oh my gosh, these can't be symptoms because these are things I struggle with every single day. And I just thought I was bad. And then as the year went on, found out more about it, and then eventually found myself just so burnt out and so overwhelmed, and was like, I need to possibly look into whether I have this.
Right.
And ended up getting diagnosed with ADHD, which means I'm neurodivergent, which means that, the way my brain wires work is just different. And it's not something that I can help. It's not like a mental health thing. It's just a cognitive difference.
Right.
But this was like the most empowering and relieving moment of my life, because I think all those things that we struggle with that make us feel bad about ourselves, sometimes those things actually aren't just things that you can change. That
Right.
it's that you have to have an entirely new perspective of yourself. So I think it just helped me have so much self-love. And Tears, I'd started writing while I'm in that whirlwind. So that beginning lyric, it says, I'm spilling over, pain all over the floor, tried to wash it out, got so tired I couldn't do it anymore. And that was me in a session after I'd had a day where I'd been writing with a really dear friend, the guy who actually produced Your Skin.
Yeah.
And I left the session for a bit to make some tea and just started crying because I was like, I'm so tired of feeling all over the place.
Right.
And had this little line, which is, I hope my tears don't dry up. And so the next day I went into a different session and outpoured all these words. But then I got diagnosed in the middle of writing it. And so the bridge of the song is me kind of saying to myself, like, I see the power in this. I'm not going to fake. I don't have to mask. I don't have to keep apologizing. It's okay to be in the ugliness and in the beauty of
Right.
like this thing. So that's Tears, which my brother's always like, you would have no clue that song is about anything.
But knowing the backstory, I think, is just so empowering, especially to those who struggle with whatever it is that they're dealing
Yeah.
with. And I don't know, it was just so nice to hear that story from you. And I think that it's so awesome that all of your songs in general, the way that you write it is so raw and so authentic, and it gives like a little insight to who you are. And because of that, it allows your listeners to kind of realize so many things about themselves or face things about themselves that, you know, they never really could quite understand or never really could quite have the courage to face.
Thank you.
So
that means a lot.
I think it's really beautiful that you're able to do this with your music. And I have to ask, you just released Tears.
Yeah.
Is there any more to look forward to
There
with
really
BEKA?
is. If you're at the show tonight, I'm actually going to be playing my next single. It's like an unreleased song.
Oh!
Nowhere else in the world has got to hear it, apart from Taiwan. Love you, Taiwan. And that's going to be the next single. And I think all these next songs, the body of work is kind of, I guess it's what happened last year, which was this really deep looking in.
Right.
But this next single that's coming out is kind of like a part 2 of More Than Friends.
Ooh.
Yeah, which is scary and exciting. Yeah, so lots more songs, hopefully coming back, more music videos, festivals.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you did mention that this is going to be your show tonight. And this is actually your first time here in the Philippines where you aren't just singing with Han.
Exactly.
But you are also going to be performing
Yeah.
on your own. What is that like? How does that feel to you?
It's so amazing. I absolutely love it. And this has been, I know this is meant to be a secret, but it genuinely has been my, like, the show I've been most excited for. And I think it's just wild because coming out to play songs that people know on the other side of the earth is so wild.
Right.
But it's been so freeing as well because I've been wanting to play here for so long and to have such a beautiful reception. Yeah, it's just so exciting. I can't wait.
Well, it is very, very exciting, and we all can't wait for you to share your music, especially here in the Philippines. You're going to be here in Manila
Yeah.
and in Davao
Yeah.
and in Cebu. So we're super excited for that. Thank you so much
Thank you for having
joining
me.
us today. And if there is one thing that you would like to tell all the people who are listening right now, whether it be about your music or whether it be about just anything.
Oh my gosh. Well, firstly, I absolutely love you with every fiber of my being. And also, secondly, just remember that you're amazing. Like, there truly is not one other human on this planet like you. So you just get to enjoy the amazingness and the mess of who you are. And that's like a real gift. You're great. I love you.
BEKA with us here on The Monster, everyone. Please make sure to look forward to her shows here in Manila, in Davao, and in Cebu. And make sure to listen to all her amazing songs. If you want to feel a little bit more, I swear, trust me, listen to the songs. Anyway, Monsters, that was BEKA. Thank you so much again for joining us. It was
for
such a
having me.
huge honor being able to chat with you.
You're amazing.
Thank
You were
you.
amazing.
And of course, Monsters, it is time for us to get back to the music. Let us play you a track by Han, this one with BEKA. It's called Location Unknown. Once again, you are tuned in to Right Wednesday with me, Ria Ramz, only here on Summer's Hottest Monster RX 93.1.
Monster exclusive interview. Monster exclusive interview. Only from Manila's hottest. Monster RX 93.1.